When you think of palatial homes in the United Kingdom, likely your mind first drifts to Buckingham Palace with its 775 rooms, or perhaps Windsor Castle sprawling across 13 acres of Berkshire countryside. You might picture Blenheim Palace's baroque grandeur, or the Tower of London's ancient stones, each one representing centuries of royal power and architectural ambition. Although those stereotypical abodes wouldn't tip the scales when it comes to spending filthy lucre in order to be built, that distinction would be reserved for a Welsh castle you've probably never heard of, one that cost more than several Windsor castles combined. Indeed, Cardiff Castle consumed $4 billion in today's money, funded entirely by one man's coal fortune, and realised through 16 years of obsessive craftsmanship, where every door handle was custom designed, and £8 million worth of gold leaf was applied by hand to a single ceiling. In today's episode of Old Money Mansions, we explore how coal money and scholarly obsession converge to create the most expensive castle ever built in Britain, a place where zodiac ceilings meet Byzantine mosaics, and every surface tells a story worth more than most Victorian mansions cost to build entirely. If you were to visit Cardiff Castle today, you'd first enter through the main gate and find yourself confronting not one castle but several. Roman walls, Norman keep, and Victorian Gothic towers rising before you. Turn right and head toward the clock tower, where 132 feet of Victorian ambition pierce the Welsh sky, topped with 10-foot-tall statues representing the 7 classical planets. Step inside and begin climbing the spiral staircase to discover 7 floors of bachelor apartments, each room dedicated to different aspects of time and the cosmos. The winter smoking room greets you first with its zodiac ceiling painted by Fred Weeks, while 6 stained glass windows depict the Norse gods who gave their names to our weekdays. Small carved figures in the corners represent sunrise, noon, dusk and night, while the gold-leafed stone chimney piece shows love, surrounded by scenes of winter pleasures. Continue upward to find the bachelor bedroom celebrating mineral wealth, appropriate, given the fortune beneath Welsh coalfields that funded all this splendour. At the tower's apex, the summer smoking room presents the universe with a painted dome of constellations above a golden chandelier representing the sun. Glass inlays in the ceiling catch light to create a glittering night sky, while the floor's encaustic tiles display a mosaic map of the world beneath your feet. Descend and cross to the main residential block where the banqueting hall occupies the site of the medieval Great Hall, its hammer-beam roof soaring overhead. Carved angels hold heraldic shields, while elaborate fireplaces depict scenes from the castle's Norman period. The walls covered in murals of medieval life and legend. Pass beneath into the library, perhaps the most welcoming space in the castle, where red and gold walls display putti bearing names of Shakespeare, Molière, and other literary giants. The chimney-piece features 5 figures holding tablets in Greek, Hebrew, Assyrian, hieroglyphics, and runic scripts, a scholarly Tower of Babel in stone. Original Burgess furniture fills the room, including desks with hidden heating systems concealed behind decorative grills, while carved Darwinian monkeys puzzle over the Book of Truth. Climb to Lord Bute's personal bedroom, where nearly 200 beveled mirrors in the ceiling reflect his name John in Greek letters, creating an infinity of identity. 7 stained glass windows surround you with the 7 churches of Asia from Revelations, while the adjacent bathroom showcases a carved walnut screen inset with 60 different types of marble. But save the best for last, enter the Arab room in the Herbert Tower, where 2 floors were removed to accommodate the extraordinary Muqarnas ceiling. The honeycomb wooden structure, covered in pure gold leaf, contains £8 million worth of gold applied by hand over months of painstaking work. Crystal balls in Egyptian-inspired windows refract sunlight onto the golden ceiling, creating dancing patterns while Mishrabaya shutters maintain privacy in authentic Islamic style. Italian marble covers every surface, while the Latin memorial to William Burgess reminds visitors John Marquis of Bute built this in 1881. Stand in this golden chamber and try to comprehend that this single room cost more than most Victorian mansions. But then, most Victorian mansions weren't built by the richest man in Britain. These spectacular interiors represent merely 16 years of work and £2.5 million Victorian pounds, enough money to have built 50 Windsor castles. Behind this $4 billion fantasy stood a 6-month-old orphan who would grow up to become the richest man in Britain, his fortune built on black Welsh coal and his dreams shaped by medieval manuscripts. The third Marquess of Bute inherited his title at just 6 months old in 1848, instantly becoming one of the richest infants in the world. His family had transformed Cardiff from a sleepy Welsh town into the coal metropolis of the world, generating unprecedented wealth from the Industrial Revolution's insatiable hunger for fuel. In 1862, 2 million tons of coal were exported from Cardiff docks, but by 1913, this had exploded to nearly 11 million tons annually. Cardiff became the boom town of late Victorian Britain. For several years before World War I, the tonnage of cargo handled at Cardiff outstripped even London or Liverpool. The secret of the Bute family's astronomical wealth lay in perfect positioning. They owned vast coal deposits beneath their Welsh estates and controlled the land around Cardiff's natural harbour. Welsh steam coal from the central portion of the South Wales coalfield was widely recognised as the source of the best quality steam coals in the world. The Royal Navy signed a contract in 1851 ensuring that only coal from South Wales would power British ships, valuing its smokeless burning properties for tactical advantages. Word spread globally about Welsh coal quality, with demand and pricing being decided daily in the Cardiff Coal Exchange, an organisation comparable to what OPEC represents for oil today. The Coal Exchange reportedly became the first place where a £1 million cheque was signed, testament to the enormous sums flowing through Cardiff's coal trade. Between 1840 and 1870, Cardiff's population grew at a rate of nearly 80% per decade, from 10,000 to over 82,000 residents. This explosive growth generated enormous land values and rental income for the Bute estate, which owned much of central Cardiff's expanding territory. By the time the third Marquess reached adulthood, he enjoyed an inherited income of £300,000 annually, approximately $180 million in today's money. Yet this young man with unlimited wealth proved utterly unlike typical Victorian aristocrats, developing what contemporaries called a strain of shyness and sensitive diffidence. Raised entirely under feminine influences after his father's death, Bute showed little interest in hunting, shooting, gambling, or conventional social gatherings. Instead, he became a scholar and somewhat of a recluse by temperament, with a penetrating sense of religion and deep veneration for all that is good and beautiful. His character combined vast wealth with genuine intellectual passion for medieval art and architecture, viewing Gothic revival as spiritual mission rather than mere aesthetic choice. Bute possessed a keen and logical intellect that approached every subject systematically, whether theology, history, or architecture. His conversion to Catholicism in December 1868 at age 21 scandalized Victorian society so thoroughly that Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli used him as the basis for his novel Lothair. This wasn't mere religious fervor. Bute concluded through systematic study that Anglican tenets were inconsistent with non-communion with the Catholic Church. His personal conviction held that the Roman Catholic Church was the true Church of God because it had not been corrupted by Reformation. This deep Catholic faith would drive his architectural ambitions, viewing the recreation of medieval religious art and architecture as both scholarly pursuit and spiritual duty. Upon reaching adulthood, Bute was appalled by Cardiff Castle's existing condition, writing that he was painfully alive to the fact that the castle is very far indeed from setting anything like an example in art. His solution would be to hire an architect who shared his medieval passions and give him something no architect had ever received: unlimited funds and complete creative freedom. The stage was set for history's most expensive castle project, but first, Bute needed to find the perfect architect to realize his vision. In 1865, the third Marquess of Bute met William Burgess and discovered the architect who would transform his medieval dreams into three-dimensional reality. Both men were products of their times, Both had fathers whose industrial endeavours provided the means for their sons' architectural achievements, and both sought to redeem the evils of industrialism by reliving the art of the Middle Ages. To the Marquess and his wife, Burgess became the sole inspiring one, a kindred spirit who shared their passion for medieval scholarship and Gothic beauty. The partnership worked because architect and patron shared identical obsessions: medieval art, religious symbolism, architectural history, and the conviction that Gothic revival represented spiritual truth rather than mere style. Bute brought more than money to the relationship. As a scholar, antiquarian, compulsive builder, and enthusiastic medievalist, he provided the intellectual framework that guided the project. Burgess himself understood the economics of excellence, writing that good art is far too rare and far too precious ever to be cheap. The architect received something unprecedented in architectural history: unlimited funds and complete creative freedom to realize his vision without compromise. Working from 1865 until his death in 1881, Burgess didn't simply restore the medieval castle, he created an entirely new Gothic revival fantasy. The project's scope was revolutionary because, rather than restoring existing medieval features, Burgess and Bute created a complete architectural fantasy that had never existed in the medieval period. Every room would tell a different story, every surface would carry symbolic meaning, and every detail would require custom craftsmanship of the highest order. The 150-foot clock tower, completed in 1875, became the project's most recognizable feature, built on the site of a Roman bastion. Construction required years of work by specialized craftsmen, creating unique astronomical instruments, carved stonework, and painted decorations that cost more than most entire buildings of the era. Bute established dedicated workshops employing the finest Welsh craftsmen. This wasn't renovation, but creating an entire luxury manufacturing operation. The project required establishing separate workshops for stonework, wood carving, metalwork, textile weaving, glass painting, and decorative painting, each employing master artisans full-time. Master craftsmen, including Thomas Nichols for sculpture, H.W. Lonsdale for painting, Fred Weeks for decorative painting, and Frederick Smallfield for tile painting, worked exclusively on castle elements. Burgess designed literally everything, from door handles to ceiling murals, tapestries to furniture, with nothing bought off the shelf, and everything custom created for specific rooms and themes. The economic impact on Cardiff was substantial, as the castle project became one of the city's major employers for 16 years. Materials were imported from across the known world: gold leaf for ceilings, semi-precious stones for inlay work, rare hardwoods, hand-carved Italian marble, and custom-forged metalwork. The Arab room alone required importing authentic Islamic architectural elements and hiring specialists in Middle Eastern decorative techniques to achieve Burgess's vision. Throughout the castle, Burgess pioneered Victorian building techniques while maintaining medieval aesthetic principles, seamlessly integrating modern conveniences. Hidden heating systems, advanced plumbing and gas lighting were incorporated without disrupting the overall Gothic fantasy. Innovation concealed within tradition. The integration of modern technology demonstrated Burgess's genius, creating medieval atmosphere while providing Victorian comfort through ingeniously disguised mechanical systems. Every surface, from floor tiles to ceiling paintings, carried symbolic meaning related to each room's specific theme, creating a three-dimensional encyclopedia of Victorian knowledge. The castle functioned as an intellectual achievement, reflecting scholarly passions about history, mythology, religion, astronomy, and literature. Architecture as education. But this extraordinary fusion of unlimited wealth, scholarly passion, and artistic genius came at a price that would stagger even modern billionaires. The project ultimately cost approximately £2.5 million, an almost incomprehensible sum for the Victorian era that requires context to properly understand. To grasp this amount, consider that the entire annual budget for the British Army in 1865 was approximately £14 million. Bute spent nearly 18% of Britain's entire military budget on a single castle renovation, a proportion that would be impossible today. Using historical inflation calculations, This translates to between $3.2 and $4 billion in 2025 currency. This makes Cardiff Castle potentially the most expensive private residential project in British history, dwarfing even royal palaces. Edward III's Windsor Castle renovation from 1350 to 1377 cost £51,000, described by historians as the most expensive secular building project of the entire Middle Ages in England. At $70 to $80 million in modern money, Windsor Castle's famous renovation represents merely 2% of Cardiff Castle's cost. Edward I's Welsh conquest castles, built to cement English dominance over Wales, seem modest by comparison to Bute's Victorian extravaganza. Caernarfon Castle cost between £20,000 and £25,000, or $30 to $40 million today, 1% of Cardiff Castle's budget. Beaumaris Castle required £11,000, roughly $15 to $18 million today, while Rhuddlan Castle cost £9,000, or $12 to $15 million today. The entire construction cost of St Finbarr's Cathedral in Cork, Burgess's other major project, was £100,000. Cardiff Castle cost 25 times more than building an entire cathedral. Even contemporary castle restorations pale beside Bute's achievement. Norwich Castle's 2020 to 2025 restoration cost £27.5 million, less than 1% of Cardiff's Victorian price tag. Bavaria's famous Neuschwanstein Castle cost 6.2 million German gold marks, roughly $47 million today, approximately 1% of Cardiff Castle's cost. While Neuschwanstein is larger and more famous internationally, Cardiff Castle's per square foot cost was exponentially higher due to its intricate interior artistry. Unlike royal projects requiring parliamentary approval, Bute funded Cardiff Castle entirely from private wealth without budget committees, public scrutiny, or financial oversight. This freedom from constraint enabled the unlimited spending that made the project so extraordinarily expensive by any historical standard. Skilled craftsmen's wages in the Victorian era remained relatively low compared to project materials and design complexity, allowing Bute to employ armies of artisans. The combination of Cardiff's coal wealth, Bute's unique personality, and Burgess's artistic genius created the perfect conditions for history's most expensive castle project. Burgess died in 1881 before completing his masterwork, but Bute ensured the architect's vision was fully realized, adding that memorial inscription in the Arab Room. The third Marquess lived only 19 years after Burgess, dying in 1900 at age 53, having spent his fortune creating something unprecedented. Cardiff Castle represents the absolute peak of Victorian architectural ambition and wealth, where unlimited money met unlimited imagination without compromise. The interiors remain unmatched in British domestic architecture, establishing Cardiff Castle as the supreme achievement of Victorian Gothic revival design. At $4 billion in today's money, it stands as testament to what happens when one of the world's richest men gives history's most creative Gothic architect complete freedom. The Victorians, it seems, didn't just build for power like medieval kings or comfort like modern owners. They built for pure, unlimited artistic expression. And at Cardiff Castle, they created interiors so spectacular that they have never been equaled in domestic architecture, establishing it as the supreme achievement of an age that believed anything was possible with enough coal, cash, and creativity. And now, we'd like to see you in the comments. Are you a native of the UK? And if so, have you visited, or would you like to visit, Cardiff Castle? We look forward to hearing your opinions, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Old Money Mansions. Cheers.